In today's episode, 3 crazy brain hacks that make prospects buy, even though they really shouldn't work. Welcome to Bullet Points, the show that takes the mystery out of what makes proposals persuasive. I'm your host, ChrisSant, and mystery is really the right word to use today, because some of the tricks we're going to talk about absolutely seem like they should not work. These are brain hacks. In other words, these are glitches in the way the brain processes information that allows us to win more by flipping a switch in your prospects' brains. Now let's be clear, you're not going to go from a 2% win rate to a 98% win rate from these, but you will win more. We'll look at the research behind each of these brain hacks as we talk about them, but overall they could easily amount to increasing your wins by several percent. So if you currently win about $100 million in contracts per year, we're talking about $4 or $5 million more per year just by including a few key words. That means in 5 years, the 10 minutes you spend here today will be worth around $25 million. Not too bad. The first of the brain hacks is what's called the tangibility bias. If you've ever wondered why people buy gold and silver in the face of economic uncertainty, or why people are more likely to own a single house instead of investing in a diverse array of real estate holdings from across the country or across the world, you were confronting the tangibility bias. Something is tangible if it takes up space in the real world, something you can touch or hold. You can go visit it and reassure yourself that it really is there.
It's mine, my precious.
Compare that to a mutual fund. With a mutual fund, not only is it a very theoretical type of ownership that you have in all these companies, but you don't even have the stock certificates. You have shares in a mutual fund that has the stock certificates.
Do I own any? I don't even know what they are.
You don't have to be an evolutionary biologist to see that our caveman forefathers would prefer something tangible to something theoretical. But what about in the modern age? It makes no difference whatsoever. Several really exciting studies out of Boston University have shown that people prefer tangible things because the quality of tangibility itself provides a misleading impression of lower risk. Let's try it. Would you rather invest $50,000 in actual solid gold bars that you could sell or melt down or do whatever you wanted with in the case of a financial emergency? Or would you rather invest the $50,000 in a security like the iShares Gold Trust ETF, which tracks gold prices? The majority of respondents say that the physical gold feels like the safer investment. After all, if the economy goes south, you're not left with worthless pieces of paper.
How flexible and weak that is.
You have physical product. You could sell it or barter it. And it is possible that in the face of a complete and total economic collapse, physical gold would be more valuable. Although I suspect that at that point, most people are interested in food and water and not in jewelry. But more importantly, how often has the entire economic system completely and totally collapsed? The answer is never. It has literally never happened. But what does happen every single day in every country in the world? Fires, robberies, burglaries, greedy relatives, accidents.
Tell me it wasn't about emotion when you shot John and left us all for dead.
That wasn't about emotion. It was about a lot of gold, and I wanted it.
Yet somehow it still feels safer to our caveman brains to have a tangible physical product. Or how about this? People were asked to rate the financial risk of buying a $100,000 house or putting $100,000 into a security that tracks national home prices. and pays monthly dividends that track average rents. In other words, which is riskier, a house or a house-like security? Again, it feels like a solid structure, so much more real than a security. But realness is not the same as riskiness. And a diversified real estate security is not subject to a local employer shutting down and moving jobs out of country, tax increases from incompetent local government that drives everybody's property values down, regional crime waves, or any other factor that affects a single location. We all know the expression, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's the basis behind the entire field of financial economics and portfolio theory. But people don't make decisions based on abstract reasoning about portfolio theory.
So I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. I'm betting everything I've got on you.
A tangible product feels safer to the gut, and that's what they choose. In fact, if you want to know just how much this is a gut feeling, listen to the next experiment they did. They asked people to rate how risky various stocks were for fake companies. The only thing they varied were the names of the companies. Once again, people prefer tangibility, even when the tangibility is only represented in the company's name, which is about as intangible as you can get. Nonetheless, companies with tangible type names, things like Silver Rock or Oak Tree or Granite Financial, were rated as less risky than companies with intangible names like West or Principal or Liberty Financial. So the names of the companies themselves are enough to trigger the tangibility bias. But it actually gets even crazier. They then tested logos for fake companies. Companies with logos that incorporated something tangible were rated as less risky than companies whose logos didn't incorporate anything tangible. So we've gone from gold bars, to houses, to company names, to now the little picture that they put next to their name to symbolize their company. And in every case, people prefer tangible to intangible. What does this mean for your proposal or your sales presentation? It means that you should incorporate tangibility into your proposal offering as much as possible. If you're selling a product, it's easier. Pictures of the product and people using the product, display samples when you're meeting in person, and using descriptors that emphasize tangibility. Solid construction you can feel. Brushed steel that's smooth to the touch. Emphasize your product's tactile qualities. But you can also emphasize tangibility with services. You can talk about how, in your commitment to quality, each employee is handed a hefty binder full of your problem resolution procedures on their very first day. You can describe how your code is running at over 300 data centers, which contain enough computers to cover Central Park in New York. You can show how the outsourced call centers you provide answer more calls per year than there are people in the state of Florida, along with a graphic showing dense crowds in Miami. Some of these are metaphors, some are analogies, but all of them tie your intangible services to actual tangible things that feel less risky to the prospect. The distinction between products and services brings up our second brain hack. Depressed proposal writers tend to think that everything comes down to price. It's an easy excuse. What everything really comes down to is actually value. The problem is that value can take many different forms. In fact, by definition, anything that the prospect values is part of the value you offer. But we can say this: two of the major components of value are money and time. Money can be increasing revenue or profit. It could be decreasing costs and fixed expenses. Time can be producing more of something, doing it faster, being more efficient, eliminating waste, removing obstacles. Research has shown that activating thoughts about time, as opposed to money, improves people's attitudes towards your products and makes them more likely to choose you. The reason this works is because when you emphasize time benefits in your proposal, you're emphasizing the experience that the prospect will have with your product or service. This is a serious and important revelation. Since the initial discovery of this phenomenon at Stanford, it's been replicated in dozens of studies in a wide array of situations. It turns out that people think differently about time than money. You can't make up lost time. Wasting time is more painful than wasting money. Additionally, because the measure of time is much more ambiguous than the measure of money, people are more willing to spend time on high-risk propositions. They don't feel like they're risking as much. So this one is simple. Emphasize time savings, improving quality of life, efficiency and productivity gains, and other time-related sources of value whenever possible. Now this doesn't mean don't include money-related sources of value. It just means make sure you're also including quantified value propositions regarding time, something the vast majority of proposals lack. The final brain hack is the craziest of all. At least with the tangibility bias, you can understand why our caveman brains would prefer solid, real things. And with the time versus money dichotomy, it makes sense that once you point out how you can never get back lost time, emphasizing time values is associated with winning more. But this final research takes the cake. At the University of Toronto, some clever researchers ran a series of studies to find out how the time versus money dichotomy interacts with, wait for it, anthropomorphized products. What they found is that there is actually a special combination of words and images that lead to over a 20% increase in people purchasing your product. That combination is selling a functional product by emphasizing money values with an anthropomorphized image of your product. So by functional product, they're talking about something that people buy strictly for the use of it. An iPhone has functional aspects, but it also has strong aesthetic and even prestige components. A functional product is something like a fire extinguisher, or a drill bit, or a vaccine, or a quantity of chemicals, or some length of pipe. If that's what you're selling, then this brain hack will work for you. It'll also work for you if a functional product is a discrete and separate part of what you're selling. That means there's an aspect to your offering that you can justifiably and logically discuss on its own. You then want to emphasize the money values. These are the things we mentioned earlier, like cutting costs or increasing revenues or profits that the prospect will get from buying your product. And finally, as you set out your money-based value proposition for your fire extinguisher, you want to include an anthropomorphized image of your fire extinguisher right there. Put some cute little eyes on it, make a happy face on it. And believe it or not, your functional product where you're emphasizing money values with an anthropomorphized image will increase people's ratings for you by about 20% over what happens when they see the exact same value proposition but a non-anthropomorphized image. Just to show you how crazy this is, if you mention time instead of money with the anthropomorphized image, ratings for your product drop by about half. Apparently, deep down inside, people don't want to spend time and form social connections with fire extinguishers and vaccines. But when you do have a functional product and you emphasize money values with an anthropomorphized image, ratings for your offering go up about 20%. The funny thing about these, of course, is that you can't try them out on your prospect and then when you win, call the prospect up and say, "So, do you think you bought from us because we put the face on the fire extinguisher?" Of course they're going to say no. People always think of themselves as rational and reasonable. But study after study have shown that these things work. There are definite tricks out there that can earn you millions of extra dollars per year just by using the right words and pictures. So try these out. Let me know how they go. We're already hearing some great feedback from people who put some of the tips from our previous bullet points into practice. And I can't wait to hear feedback on the successes you get from this one. Make sure you join us next time when we discuss how jury research can help you sell a whole lot more. Until then, thank you for spending this time with us. I wish you a happy holiday season. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.